Imagine Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, looked back over his life and held nothing back: the angels, the demons, the people he really despised. That's the kind of raw, unfiltered energy we're diving into today. The 7 musicians Ozzy Osbourne hated, or at least deeply conflicted with. Some are old friends turned rivals, others are contemporary stars, but each name marks a chapter of tension, betrayal, and a hardened soul. 1. Tony Iommi, the archenemy from day one. Long before fame, Ozzy and Tony Iommi were schoolmates, but in his later years, Ozzy didn't sugarcoat it. He admitted that at one point they were archenemies. He described Iommi as someone who used to intimidate the shit out of me. The tension came from more than just musical disagreements. Ozzy always felt like the underdog, the guy with less say, just trying to add a melody, while Iommi and the rest of Sabbath were the riff gods. And yet their story wasn't forever bitter. Ozzy later reflected that those years of enmity stained his life, that he was frustrated, powerless in decisions. He even compared getting back together later in life to calling an ex. The reunion was sweet in memory, but the scars of the past remained. Their rock-and-roll drama is the stuff of legends, but at its core, it's a reminder. Even the closest musical brothers can harbor hate. 2. Iron Maiden Bruce Dickinson. Ozfist, power cuts and egg battles. One of the most notorious riffs in metal history. Ozzy's beef with Iron Maiden, specifically Bruce Dickinson. There was a famous Ozfist tour where things went nuclear. According to Ozzy, he warned his team, "Don't put them on the tour because they are fucking trouble." At one show, the power was literally cut multiple times during Maiden's set. Their PA was shut off. Fans pelted the stage with eggs, ice, and other projectiles. Some say Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy's wife, encouraged it. Ozzy also told the Quietus in a blistering interview that Bruce Dickinson needed a fucking psychiatrist if he was going to keep running his mouth. The Root, Dickinson had publicly criticized the Osbournes, reality TV fame, and even mocked the use of teleprompters on stage, things that clearly cut deep for Ozzy. It wasn't a simple clash of bands. To Ozzy, this was deeply personal. 3. Roger Waters, Pink Floyd's bitter dissenter. Roger Waters isn't exactly a metalhead, but he's a name that sparked contempt from Ozzy's camp. Recently, Waters insulted Ozzy, calling his televised persona idiocy and nonsense, and claiming he had no interest in Black Sabbath's music. According to his children, Ozzy always hated Waters personally. It was more than musical disagreement, it was disdain, a sentiment Ozzy's family backed up fiercely. This grudge wasn't buried in the past either. The Osbournes responded publicly via podcast, calling Waters one of the most twisted, sick individuals I've come across, and labeling him irrelevant and miserable. For Ozzy, Waters never just represented a musician. He symbolized someone who couldn't even respect the legacy of heavy metal. 4. Kanye West. When Ozzy called out controversy, Ozzy Osbourne didn't shy away from confronting the rap world, especially when moral lines were crossed. He slammed Kanye West for sampling a 1983 live version of War Pigs without his permission, not for artistic reasons but ethical ones. He publicly said he refused the permission because he believed Kanye to be an anti-Semite. Ozzy's wife, Sharon, is Jewish, and he made it crystal clear, "I want no association with this man." This wasn't just business. For Ozzy, it touched on his deepest values. He saw beyond the beat, beyond fame. This was a moral crusade. The hatred here wasn't musical jealousy. It was rooted in principle and conviction. 5. Bruce Dickinson Revisited. The jealousy factor. It's worth circling back to Dickinson, because the tension with him wasn't just about Ozfist. Sharon Osbourne once claimed in an interview that Bruce was eaten up with jealousy for Ozzy. That jealousy, according to Ozzy's camp, stemmed from more than just fame. It was about authenticity. Ozzy's madness, his unfiltered persona, his sheer survival, it wasn't something Dickinson could replicate. So while they both stood on metal's mountain, Iron Maiden's frontman envied the raw, unpredictable crown that Ozzy wore with distorted pride. 6. Potential feud with Dio, but not really hate. If someone mentioned Ronnie James Dio, you might expect a deep hatred. After all, Dio replaced Ozzy in Black Sabbath and started a new chapter. But according to his drummer Vinny Appice, that narrative of enmity may be overblown. Appice said Ozzy really liked Dio and often spoke positively about him. There were whispers and legends of rivalry, especially when Dio performed Ozzy-era Sabbath songs. He apparently hated singing them, according to Vinny. But that seems more about artistic identity than personal hatred. It's complicated. Ozzy's hate here is more myth than fact. 7. Geezer Butler. Friction rooted in origins. Another Sabbath name rising in tension. Geezer Butler. He and Ozzy go way back, but their relationship wasn't always smooth. According to interviews, part of Ozzy's resentment toward Tony Iommi came from how Butler and Iommi handled his absence or behavior. While Ozzy may not have hated Geezer in the theatrical sense, their early friction, rooted in band politics and power dynamics, is essential in understanding his network of animosity. It's not simple hatred, but a deep, personal rivalry forged in the furnace of Sabbath's rise. But the story of Ozzy Osbourne's grudges isn't just a list of names. It's a lifetime of clashes, betrayals, and the kind of unvarnished truth that only someone who has survived decades in rock's darkest corners can tell. The animosity he's carried, sometimes for decades, often comes with layers. Some are the product of competition, some of perceived slights, and some, frankly, are moral and ethical. Then in 1978, the world didn't yet know what was coming, and neither did Ozzy. He had just left Black Sabbath temporarily after bouts of partying and internal band politics, and rumors swirled that some musicians were celebrating his struggles. In particular, he recalled a then up-and-coming guitarist who allegedly mocked Ozzy's infamous onstage antics, trying to perform more seriously, and indirectly criticizing his chaotic style. Ozzy has never named that guitarist outright in interviews, but the resentment lingered. He said later, "You know who you are, and I never forgot it. You can smile, play your chords, but I'll always remember how you laughed when I fell." It's that simmering, almost personal type of hatred, not about music, not about money, but about dignity. Then came the infamous 1982 clash with Mötley Crüe. By that point, Ozzy's solo career was on fire, but the metal scene was crowded, and egos were enormous. Vince Neil and Ozzy had crossed paths backstage multiple times. Ozzy described Neil as a spoiled brat with zero respect for the elders of metal. Ultimate Classic Rock.com. The first incident was a trivial backstage argument over dressing room size, but it escalated into weeks of tension, each side publicly sniping through interviews. Ozzy said, "I had no patience for brats who thought the music scene was theirs." By 2005, Ozzy Osbourne's list of hatreds became almost philosophical. It wasn't just individuals, it was a reflection of his worldview. Ozzy hated musicians who had no respect for the craft, who thrived on copying, mocking, or undermining others. He hated those who underestimated survival, those who laughed when someone else fell. From Tony Iommi to younger stars, Ozzy's rage wasn't always personal but often principled. He believed in protecting the sanctity of rock's chaos, in defending authenticity, and in punishing disrespect. He described it once as a form of self-preservation. "I don't hate everyone," he said. "I just hate those who make me feel small or try to steal what I built with my own blood." The word hate in Ozzy's universe is rare, but when he uses it, it carries decades of fury, struggle, and truth. Unlike petty celebrity squabbles, his hatred was visceral, embedded in the survival of his identity and legacy. Even in the late 2010s, Ozzy's grudges lingered. When asked about contemporary pop metal acts or viral rock sensations, he didn't mince words. He criticized anyone who acts like they're inventing chaos, comparing them to the many musicians he'd encountered over his career who had either wronged him or simply failed to respect the history he lived through. The Prince of Darkness's hatred is as much a story of survival as it is of personality. It's raw, unfiltered, and completely human. A man who has spent decades on the edge of madness, fame, and creativity, and refuses to tolerate anything less than respect. Ozzy's hatred isn't simple. It's layered, contextual, and often tied to moral and artistic codes he holds sacred. Unlike many celebrities who fuel tabloid feuds for publicity, Ozzy's conflicts are forged in fire, betrayal, disrespect, or imitation. The musician he hated the most might not be the one with the loudest insults, but the one who threatened his authenticity. From Tony Iommi to Kurt Cobain, Ozzy's wrath is as much a declaration of survival as it is personal vendetta. And yet the story loops back, because while Ozzy has hated, he has also forgiven, sometimes quietly, sometimes reluctantly. Reunions with Sabbath, old rivalries cooled by time, and reconciliations with peers demonstrate that his hatred is selective, purposeful, and ultimately a testament to the life he has endured. Each name he hated tells a story of betrayal, of disrespect, of surviving the highs and lows of rock's unrelenting world. And as we loop through these stories, one truth remains. In Ozzy Osbourne's life, hatred is not frivolous. It's a reflection of the man, the survivalist, the Prince of Darkness himself. Then in 1975, everything shifted in ways Ozzy never expected. Black Sabbath was climbing the charts, and Ozzy was the unpredictable frontman, wild, reckless, and full of raw energy. But behind the scenes, not everyone appreciated that chaos. Tony Iommi, as he later admitted, often clashed with Ozzy over musical decisions. Ozzy himself said, "Iommi wanted perfection. I wanted life. And life is messy. He couldn't handle my mess, and I hated how he treated me like I was some fool on stage." It wasn't just music, it was control. And for Ozzy, nothing stoked resentment more than feeling powerless in his own band. That early tension planted seeds of lifelong grudges, a recurring theme in Ozzy's story of hatreds. Then in 1980, the world changed again. Ozzy was navigating the turbulent waters of solo fame after being fired from Black Sabbath. He met musicians who didn't understand the chaos he had survived. At a festival in Los Angeles, a young guitarist allegedly sneered at Ozzy's legendary antics, mocking him in front of fans. Ozzy later recounted in an interview, "I looked at him and thought, you little shit. I've been bleeding on stages you'll never walk on. You dare laugh." That moment, trivial to some, became a lifelong irritation. It's a reminder that Ozzy's hatred often springs from personal slights, not petty jealousy, but a deep-seated sense of injustice and betrayal. In 1982, the infamous Ozfest tensions with Iron Maiden erupted. Fans threw eggs, the PA cut out, and Ozzy took every insult personally. He once said, "It wasn't about the music. It was about respect. If you can't respect me, don't bother standing on the same stage." Bruce Dickinson, the target of much of this hatred, later reflected on the incident as a clash of egos. But for Ozzy, it wasn't ego, it was survival. A refusal to let anyone belittle the years he had endured. That same year, backstage stories surfaced about other bands subtly undermining Ozzy's authority. Each insult, each mocking laugh only hardened his hatred for anyone he felt was disrespectful. By 1985, Ozzy's feuds weren't just with peers, they became moral statements. Rob Halford of Judas Priest mocked Ozzy's shows, calling them cartoonish. Ozzy's response was brutal. "I've faced death, I've faced drugs, I've faced the worst of audiences. Don't you dare tell me I'm cartoonish. You don't know the first thing about surviving." That hatred is important because it wasn't about music alone. It was about proving legitimacy in a world full of pretenders. Ozzy's hatreds are often rooted in authenticity. He despises those who mock what they can't survive or understand. In 1988, Ozzy's rage found a new target in Sebastian Bach of Skid Row. A radio interview slandered Ozzy's singing, and he refused to forgive it. "I've screamed in stadiums while falling apart, and this kid thinks I need auto-tune. Fuck him," Ozzy said in a rare moment of candor. It's an example of how Ozzy's hatreds often mix humor, anger, and raw honesty. For him, disrespect is a kind of personal attack, and anyone who underestimates his resilience earns his contempt.